Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so I work for a company called PageFair. We have people here in New York, but actually we grew out of Dublin. So it's a real privilege to be here in person with you because I've been in this room before, but via video conference. That's just not the same. And I know that the ARF is where you come as an industry to think a little bit deeper. So hopefully that's what we're going to do today. I want to tackle some big problems in the half hour I have. Before I do that, just 2 slides on our company. The people who founded PageFair before 2012 were PhD computer scientists way before 2012, in the early 2000s, at Trinity College Dublin. And they realized this amazing new technology, this internet, was going to be something that people would want to shoot at each other across. And so they created the infrastructure to enable people to shoot at each other at scale all across the world. And that company, called Demonware, ended up being spun out, sold to Activision, and to this day, it supports the biggest multiplayer games in the world. So some of that team, some of that founding team, went on to become publishers in their own right. And as publishers, in this case of a computer game, these very, very talented network scientists started to experience early stage ad blocking. Their own computer game site was seeing something crazy in the analytics. There was a gap between the traffic they were winning and the cash they were being paid out by the networks. And this is why some of the best computer network engineers in the world, instead of helping people to shoot at each other, started to look at the problem of ad blocking. Now, this gave us a bit of a head start. I think maybe it's fair to say we helped or did put ad blocking on the international agenda. And every year, we release at least one major report. And in the last week, the latest one came out, and that is this one, the State of the Blocked Web. I'm going to briefly go into some of the data here. What I want to do is split my remarks into 2 halves. The first half is all bad news. It's worse than bad news. It's terrible news. The second half is all good news. So there's kind of an emotional arc that we're going to go on together. In the bad news, a little bit of good news. There's a naughty little interactive graph. If you go to pagefair.com/intel and mouse over any country, you'll get graphs as you scroll down the page that'll show you ad blocking figures. But I want to start off with global figures over the last 6-7 years by month. I want to give you the global picture. Okay, so we see from an early stage, ad blocking is rising fairly steadily. And then from here, the rise is actually pretty linear. There have been all sorts of scare headlines about ad blocking. But actually, from up to this point, the growth is linear. And up to this point, the growth is also linear. Now, it does look pretty scary as a chart, though. If this were any of our department's revenue figures, we would be entitled to a bonus. Right? So this is the opposite of you getting a bonus. That's why it's red. This is bad news. But this is only desktop. So now your bonus is looking great. Just to put this in context, because this looks really, really bad, most of that blue, nearly all of it, is not happening here. So this bonus is not yours. It's your colleagues in Asia Pacific who are winning this bonus. You don't need to worry about it right now. But again, you see there's a kind of a straightish line happening here. If you ignore this bit, ad blocking is kind of moving with a certain momentum. What I'm trying to suggest is that the growth is reasonably steady. So let's break this down into some figures.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
so is
please.
this 2016 data?
Yeah, so I've clipped this. This is up to December 2016.
And then let's start from April 9.
Yeah, April 09, yeah. So we're seeing just over 6 years. I think just over 6 years. So here's where we were at the very beginning of this year, at the very end of last year. Just over 50 million people in this market blocking ads. This is in the States only. And another 1.5 million on mobile. Now we fold those numbers together when we're going for the global numbers because presumably it's the same people on both devices. Better off to undercount than overcount. And this brings us to about 18% of the online population who are blocking. If you think about who these people are, the demographic has flattened a bit. At least the ages have flattened a bit since the last time we surveyed them in 2014. When we surveyed these people at the very end of 2016, we find that actually ad blocking has percolated across the ages and is now hitting pretty much everybody. But you find some interesting things with these people. The first is, and it echoes, I think, what you were saying, Chris. I think this is in your slides. Yeah, it echoes what you were saying. These people are 1.5 times more likely than the average to have a bachelor's degree. But these people over here, 18 to 24-year-old, they are 3 times more likely than the national average to have a bachelor's degree. Now, does anyone know anyone who managed to get a bachelor's degree by the time they were 18, 19, maybe even 20? I remember Doogie Howser, MD.
Exactly.
I'm delighted. I'm delighted people got that reference. Okay, so the Doogie Howsers in the studio were like, what the?
Which is okay.
Okay, so there's something happening with the 18. He was a doctor who was very precocious.
So Neil Patrick Harris before he was on Broadway, yes.
So there is something happening with the 18 to 24-year-olds. A lot of these people must still be in college. But by the time they graduate, lots of the people who are in that age bracket and have graduated appear to be blocking. So that 3 times more likely is probably a multiple of that for a sliver of this, but we don't know. That's supposition. Okay, so let's break this down by monthly active devices over the last 3 years. Again, now we're into the United States figures. We're no longer looking at the global figures. When we plot this on this wonderful big screen, we get another scary chart with some funny dips. So what's going on there? Now here's where the guesswork begins. You'll notice there's at least 3 of these dips. I think these are the summer months. I think there's something happening on university campuses that anyone who experienced the growth of MP3s and similar technologies will remember. Right? Ad blocking seems to go down in active terms in the summer, but the trend line seems roughly, and this is a bit sloppy what I'm doing here, but the trend line, it seems to me reasonably safe to say, is linear, not exponential. So every time we bring out a report, these headlines appear, and they call ad blocking cataclysmic. They say the world is going to collapse tomorrow, the sky's falling. Actually, no, that's not the analogy. The ad block situation is not the adpocalypse, which is a quote from several headlines. The right analogy, I think, is climate change. Ad blocking is like climate change. It is this steady, inevitable, slow, but incipient process of the equivalent of polar melt. And when you look at a glacier over time, and this is a glacier in Greenland, this does not look that dissimilar if you rotated it from what's happening with ad blocking. We're seeing the gradual hollowing out of a certain type of audience. And let's talk about blame, since we're talking about bad news. The blame here is really on all of our own shoulders. The blame here is on the digital advertising industry. There's an acronym for this: Digital Ad Industry Short-Termism, or as I like to call it, DAS. New president would probably refer to this as something he found sad. Deeply saddening, deeply saddening. So let's talk about why people ad block. Now, we have detailed stuff on this in the latest report. I'm not going to get into that. In no particular order, we all know that these are the reasons. There are 4 of them. Security, the ads are intrusive, they obscure the content, they hoover up bandwidth, and privacy. These, in whatever order you find them, will appear on every single research list. But the one item that will appear on none of those lists, I think, is at least equally important. It's the 5th item. People now block ads because they can block ads. What we found was that in 2014, privacy was the biggest or one of the biggest reasons why people blocked ads. And what we find now in 2016 is that privacy is actually quite far down the list. And it seems to me that if the ad industry had been serious about privacy and data protection, that genie would never have been let out of the bottle. But now that ad blocking has spread to this wider demographic, one or two heads nodding, a few heads going, hell no. Now that ad blocking has spread to this wider demographic, it has become a convenience. And I want you to think about what convenience looks like when you're thinking of advertising. It looks like this. In 1952, it looked like the blob off remote control. Let's take a closer look at this packaging. Click off commercials, click on entertainment. Right? Does this ring any bells? It should, because you all own one of these. You'd be suckers if you didn't. And what we know, now the blab off was apparently the first in 52. What we know is that with cords, with infrared systems, all sorts of things, remote control ended up dominating the market. It became a completely normal thing. You can also shut off long, annoying commercials while picture remains on screen. This offer from Adblock Plus is not just similar, it's exactly the same. Ad blocking equals remote control. Now in 2014, when we asked people how ad blockers how they found out about ad blocking, 80% of them, one way or another, were saying word of mouth. And when we repeated this in the last few months, we got something very, very similar. So we know that this phenomenon is viral, and it is not going anywhere anytime soon. So as an antidote to short-termism in this industry, I'm going to return to my own field, history. I was trained as a historian, and several years ago I wrote this book, A History of the Internet and the Digital Future, available in all very good bookshops near you, especially coming into Christmas. And I want to give you an opportunity to reflect back on the last few decades, the history that we have gone through, because it's too easy for us to think about the next quarter and our immediate projects. I think today, if we're going to think deeper, we need to go right back to 1991, and you're going to have to squint, because in 1991, that's what the web looked like. First websites on servers outside of CERN, where the web was born, the first websites, run pretty much all by physicists, went online. So let's jump forward to 1995. If anyone looks at this and has fond memories, be surprised. One of the reasons why you might not have fond memories is that back in 1995, when the web was 44 million people strong, Windows 95 was not initially shipped with support for the web. You couldn't get on the web with Windows as it first came out of Microsoft. So this is to give you a sense of just how far back this goes. So 1995, we're at almost 45 million people. By the time Windows 98 comes out, there's been this huge jump to just under 200 million people. And as we jump down memory lane another 5 years, we're up to 750 million people in 2003, and another 5 years, we're at 1.6 billion people in 2008. And finally, we get to the point where actually our story really begins in 2013. But I'm hoping that your mental lens has broadened a little bit as we've gone on this journey. It's now January 2013, and there are 2.7 billion people on the web. And it's at this moment where the blocked web starts to come onto our radar. This is where we published our first report. And the size of the blocked web was a fair bit under 1%. I'm not being very scientific, but it wasn't yet something to even be conscious of. Within 3 years, 2016, the web had jumped to the blocked web had jumped to 11%. And the picture in the US of these two different things, the picture in the US today is this. Now, there's a reason why I brought you on this journey back into the history of the web, and that is you saw how quickly that grew and how soon it came to dominate our businesses. And as I hit the halfway mark, it's time for us to think about what we do about that green dot, because the green dot's not going away, and the green dot will get bigger, and the green dot may eventually be the only dot on the screen. I can imagine the animation already in about 10 years' time. So it's time at the halfway point for us to think about the good news. And there is good news. When we spoke to 1,000 ad blockers, we had a panel of about 5,000 people. We were pretty rigorous in stripping out who the blockers were. When we spoke to the part of our panel of 5,000 who were blockers, so that's just over 1,000 people in our case, we asked them, in the last 2 months, we asked them, to what extent are you willing, you who have installed an ad blocker, to what extent are you willing to view an ad, any type of ad? Let's not get into the detail of what it is, but an ad. To what extent would you tolerate it? 70% of our respondents said they were willing to tolerate an ad. It does depend on the ad, it turns out. But the good news is, this is up 10% since the last time we did this survey, which was in 2014. So as the demographic of Adblock use has broadened out, there's more toleration for ads on the blocked web. That's one of the interesting first conclusions that I parked into the good news category. The second thing, in 2014, when we asked ad blockers what formats of ad they were happy to tolerate, here's what came across. They would tolerate text, they'd tolerate pictures, they'd tolerate skippable video. In other words, they tolerate ads. Right? Only if you're producing something really bad do you end up in this category. Now, in this survey, back in 2014, we gave them the opportunity to select as many different formats as they wanted. So you end up with these figures which don't add up to 100%. But in our recent survey, we asked them the same question with fewer choices, but we asked them to pick one. Right? They had to choose one format that they could live with. And what we end up with is essentially a very, very similar answer. It's skippable video. We didn't give them text as an option anymore, and it's display ads. You could think of that as IAB lean standard display. Very, very simple. Rectangles or boxes with pictures of products that someone might want someone to find out about. As I would think of it, an advertisement. Just happens to be on the web. So the first piece of good news is that the blocked web is growing, but actually people on the blocked web are okay with ads that are not in ridiculous formats. This will not win anyone a prize at the Cannes Lions, but it might actually sell some damn product. That's a different thing. So, how do we show them this stuff, right? Many, many companies, and I'm not going to speak about different suppliers. We are one such vendor, but there are now many, many technologies available for publishers to be able to reach the blocked web. You can now show, and we show at scale, ads to people who are on the blocked web. The big question is what you show them. But here, in rough terms, is what that looks like. The publisher's inventory gets shown in the normal way to the regular audience, and a subset of the publisher's inventory, lean display formats, are shown to the unblocked audience. So the web and the blocked web are both addressable. And this is what's happening now. The big question is, how do you approach these people? What is the right thing to do? I think the answer is there are 3 steps to take. The first is to acknowledge that the people who have installed ad blockers have entirely legitimate grievances caused by 20 years of experimentation, which in hindsight, we might have done another way. But 20 years of ad experimentation that brought us into this cul-de-sac. So the first step is, for publishers in particular, to listen to the legitimate grievances of users. The second step is very, very obvious. Fix the problems. We know what the problems are. Some of this work is happening now. We're members of IAB's Tech Lab contributing to that process. Fix security, UX, bandwidth, and privacy. Okay, you're a publisher. You have now listened to the legitimate grievances of your user. You're not viewing your user, your visitor, as an enemy, and you fix the problems. What's the third step? ... What should you now do? The answer is you should then serve the ads in a tamper-proof way. Once we have listened to the problems, if we're media owners and publishers in the room, and fixed these issues, publishers need to take a leaf, it seems to me, out of Facebook's book. This listen, fix, serve approach is exactly what Facebook has actually done. If you happened to be reading, for some light relief, Facebook's annual report from 2015, I can imagine you reading it right now with a cup of tea, you will have picked up on this warning to investors. What Facebook says in no uncertain terms is that it is taking ad blocking seriously. And as you know, in the middle of August, in the middle of Q3 last year, Facebook started to show ads to ad blockers. And there was about 2.5 weeks to 2 weeks of a tit-for-tat engineering war with Adblock that Facebook ultimately won. And when Facebook produced its Q3 results in its earnings call, this is what you see in the transcript for the Q3 results. Facebook CFO said, we had 18% growth in desktop, and we attribute a chunk of that growth to showing ads to people who are blocking. Now, he said we attribute roughly half of that growth to showing ads to people who are blocking. And remember that they were showing ads to people who are blocking for roughly half of the quarter. So you're getting, from your 9%, you're doubling that to about 18%. So this was very interesting. We were very, very conscious of this with the Q3 results. We wondered, when they release their Q4 results, what will they say? I think this came out last week. And they said, even though desktop as a platform is in decline, our revenue from desktop is going up, largely thanks to showing ads to people who block. And Facebook has proved something. Because they surveyed their users and found the problems with the ads and fixed them and then showed the ads, because they did it the right way, they had no user backlash. And the proof is in their figures. This means, listen, fix, serve means we can start to think about how to use that green dot in a sustainable way. And it seems to me that that green dot, that blocked web, solves 3 big problems that brands, that CMOs have had since digital was born. Because digital has yet to live up to the promise that many of us had for it. I think in our private moments we might even admit that, although not to clients. But it is true that digital has a long way to go. So 3 problems that this new green dot, this new space that we can play with, might be able to address. Let's start with fraud. The blocked web is a space where every single person on it has installed a blocker. And in many cases has a bachelor's degree, but let's skip that. One thing we know about this hip, young, generally more male, but less male than he was 2 years ago, character, is that, okay, he has great attention and the ads are scarce, but the other thing we can be reasonably sure about today, maybe not tomorrow, but today, we can be pretty sure that he's not a robot. On the blocked web, you're starting in a zero fraud environment. I'm not suggesting that that will continue. There will be bots that try and mask themselves by pretending to use blockers at some site and then go onto other sites to view ads. But at least it's a place where you're starting with totally legitimate human traffic. The second problem that ad blocking obviously solves for a brand is the clutter problem. This does not need to be a slide because it's the reality on many sites. So let me give you a simple diagram on what happens in the blocked web. This is the normal web. Attention is a very, very scarce resource. The ads are in oversupply. On the blocked web, there's plenty of attention. There are no ads, or very, very, very few. And you can imagine that on the blocked web, for example, where you're pretty convinced that people are seeing no ads, you can imagine that a brand could sponsor a visitor's journey to an entire site and request from that brand, from that media owner, that no other brands be present. And this brings us to point 3, versatility. The funnel of the web, the normal funnel of the web looks something like this. For various reasons, which we are all, I think, aware of, the web has, until now, been a medium for below-the-line stuff. Hard to feel enthusiastic about below the line. But it's hard to feel enthusiastic about any medium that doesn't cover the entire funnel. when you want to build a brand, when you want to do something above the line, I'm not sure that most brands would think, you can correct me in the panel, but I'm not sure most brands would think that the web is their first place where they're going to build a brand from nowhere. This is where they want to close the deal and make the purchase. So the web has not been versatile. And what ad blockers are saying is stop tracking me, stop getting in my face, stop retargeting me, stop with this below the line, bottom of the funnel stuff. I don't want it. I don't want the envelopes piled up below my front door, and I don't want it on my screen. So the blocked web may also be a space where brands can finally use the web for the above the line activity. It's a place with no clutter, where the people are human, where the people are human. That even needs to be said is where the people are human, at least today, where they have attention, and where they can see those ads. And the ads can be shown to them in a respectful way that doesn't need to grab attention from every other ad. So, concluding point. The blocked web is a real thing. It is not going away. It is time to engage with it. And I'm going to show you what we show media owners and publishers. I'm not a sales guy, but I'm going to show you what our sales guys show them as options. This is not because I want to sell you our solution. I doubt most of you are in a position to buy it because you're probably not publishers. So the first option a publisher has is the appeal. We start off with tamper-proof ad block detection. A message is shown, hey, please turn your ad blocker off, do us a solid. If the user says no, well, the ads are still blocked. If the user says yes, then the ads are shown in the normal way. The second option is the deal wall or the ad block wall. Now, by the way, we've tested this on hundreds of sites. It's baloney. Plenty of publishers still want to try this. We let them try it. It doesn't work. We move on to something else. That's, in truth, what happens. The second option is an ad block wall. A mandatory message to turn off your blocker or you can't access content on this site. If the user says no, which the vast majority of users do on the vast majority of sites, because very few sites have compelling and exclusive enough content to prevent that. If the user says no, then the user is exited from the site, which is a problem. If the user says yes, then we're back to this situation where the publisher can display the ad. Okay, the third option. The publisher detects there's an ad blocker present, informs them that they've fixed the ads Facebook style, and displays the ad, whether or not a blocker is switched on. The fourth of the 5 options is the user gets to choose. This is like the button in the elevator. The user gets to choose whether to turn off their blocker. Either way, the publisher will be able to generate revenue. But if the user switches off their blocker, the user is exposing themselves to all of the hazards of ads as they currently are, rather than to those specific parts, or to those specific formats that actually they probably should be exposed to. In other words, straightforward, Ivy lean standard display ads. And then the fifth choice, the direct choice. User with ad block comes onto the site, they see ads. If they have a problem with seeing ads, the ultimate power to say no to ads has always been in the hands of the user. I can close that newspaper. I can look away from the billboard. I have ultimate power of choice on the web because I can leave the site. And that is the most damaging thing that I could do to a site. So we let publishers, different types of publishers, go through these different choices and eventually land on something that works for their particular audience. But ultimately, the approach, we think, must always come back. We suggest it must always come back to this. Listen, fix, and then serve. So 3 things in summary. Adblock is the new remote control. If there's anyone in this room who doesn't have a remote control, you won't get the point. But there isn't someone who doesn't have a remote control, so you get what I'm saying. It's not going away. Second point is Facebook has figured this out. This is done. We know how to address this. As a company, we happen to be doing this with many publishers now, and others are too, I believe. Listen, fix, and then serve respectful formats that stop pissing people off, but that do hopefully raise product awareness and move product. And the last point, is that this opens up a new opportunity for marketeers. It may, in fact, save the web from being an increasingly irrelevant, untrustworthy, problematic medium. And I say that with a little bit of hurt pride, because I've had high hopes for this medium. And actually, I think the blocked web can save it. Thank you very much.